Welcome back to the Mercy Cast, where we are learning the art of compassion through the adversity of life. I am your host, Raleigh Sadler. It's Christmas time. We are almost there. You are listening to more Christmas songs than you can bear, but it's beautiful because between what the radio's sending at you and what Hallmark's sending at you, you are reminded that it is the most wonderful time of the year, whether you feel it or not. And I want to do things differently this year. I want to talk about Christmas movies because we're watching them. They're on. We don't really have a choice, but we watch them and we look for these themes, whether we know it or not. We look for themes of vulnerability. We look for themes of redemption and just triumph over adversity, whether it's watching National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, It's a Wonderful Life, A Christmas Carol, or as I like to watch, Scrooge with Bill Murray, because I think Bill Murray is one of the greatest actors that's ever graced the silver screen. Or it could be The Grinch, The Polar Express, Elf, Love Actually, Die Hard, The Family Stone. Whatever movie you like, we are watching it and we're looking for familiar themes that remind us that, you know what? It's gonna be okay. And so I am joined by my friend, Chris White. He is the director of the film Electric Jesus, amongst other films. And we're really going to talk about what movies are worth your time. So, Chris, welcome to the Mercy Cast, man. I'm glad to have you here.
I am too. Like I love spending time with you and the various conversations we've had over the years. And I can think of no better thing to talk to you about this time of year than Christmas movies. And I'm a filmmaker. So, you know, I write movies and direct movies, produce movies. And I'm also a huge fan of Christmas and Christmas movies. I hadn't even thought about Scrooge until you just said it. And Scrooge is great. Well, Bill Murray's great, but also their take on that story is awesome. Like, I need to go back and watch that this year. So already, Raleigh, you've enriched my life. I'm going to watch Scrooge. That's just a done deal.
Yeah, it's a great film.
We agree that Christmas Carol, Dickens' Christmas Carol, incredible story, incredible Christian Christmas story. Can we maybe put in there that like A Muppet Christmas Carol in lieu of Scrooged? If the audience is not a Scrooged audience, A Muppet Christmas Carol can do no wrong. Have you seen that movie?
Yes, it's been a while, but it is a classic because I think at the end of the day, we get lost in this storyline. You know, you have Ebenezer Scrooge. He's this miser. He's miserable. He's cold-hearted. He works people to death. And then he's faced with the realization that he's being visited by the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future.
He's visited by
him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's because he's faced with his own mortality, right? And I think that's a big thing that hovers over Christmas for us, especially those of us who still have Christmas traditions where we experience them with family. I mean, I can remember being 4 or 5 years old and doing Christmas, and now I'm 54 years old, and Christmas has a little bit of a tinge of sadness to it because there are people that are no longer with us celebrating Christmas. So I mean, I think that there's an aspect of what we're looking for at Christmas that does have to do with reconciling the passage of time and our own mortality. And so, what I feel whenever I encounter a Christmas Carol is that idea of, hey, there's a past Chris, there's a present Chris, and there's a future Chris. And all those Chris Whites matter, and all those Chris Whites exist. And reflecting on each of them can be very powerful and amazing to do, especially at the end of the year when most of us tend to take inventory of what happened, the year before. So yes, Christmas Carol, all its iterations. Can we just say that people need to interact with that story in the holiday season?
Yeah, I would say that because we long for redemption, whether we know it or not. And that's one of the reasons we love that film is because, like you said, all three versions of us are going to manifest at Christmas. We're going to miss the people that were with us in years prior. We're going to think about what Christmas looks like as we look at our family and seeing everyone get older. We're going to say, well, what's Christmas going to look like in 5 years and 10 years? And a story like that kind of grounds us in the reason of the season anyway. And I love how, as he got the right perspective, he started caring for his neighbor. He started loving those less fortunate. And that's something beautiful, because at Christmas time, we can all be Ebenezer Scrooges, right? We can all be these people who we want what we want. But we see this beautiful redemption come out in that he changes. Whether it's Scrooge McDuck, whether it's Bill Murray, whoever it is, he changes.
Yeah.
He buys turkey for Tiny Tim and his family. And Tiny Tim gives us that wonderful line, God bless us, everyone. And everyone is happy and we all go home excited.
But, man. Wow.
But that's just low-hanging fruit, though. Like that Christmas Carol, that's low-hanging fruit. What's an outlier? What's something that we should watch that I'm probably not going to think to watch this Christmas season?
Okay, well, let me say this. I want us to talk about the phenomenon that is Hallmark Christmas movies. The Hallmark Channel, or there's a bunch of channels now, but the cozy, feel good. They like make a new one every day of December and release it on the channel. Now, granted, I think it's fair to say that maybe we aren't the target market for the Hallmark Christmas movies. Many of them, if not all of them, seem pretty much targeted at women. They tend to be stories about women as a protagonist. The cliche Hallmark Christmas movie is there's this woman and she's very successful in her career. She has material success. She has everything somebody would want in this world. She doesn't have true love, or she doesn't have a real connection maybe in her community. And so the point of the Hallmark Christmas movie is we put her in a context, and we take her out of her current context. We put her in a different context at Christmas. And she goes through an experience that resets her life and expectations. Now, you and I mean, to me, watching those, it's like, okay, so this, serious, high achieving woman from the big city winds up going back to her hometown. And then she meets a really handsome, available, sometimes a widower, or just sometimes a guy that just never found true love. A guy that's really hunky and he wears flannel shirts and he's got like a family business he runs or something. He's got a beautiful golden retriever dog. And as much, she protests, but in the spirit of Christmas, they end up together happily ever after kind of thing. Am I kind of describing the Hallmark Christmas movie as you think of it and remember it?
Absolutely. And I think the only thing you're leaving out is just how much flannel there is, because there's always a lodge or a small town with a central park where everyone goes to. And the person always goes, and it's the thing that they don't want, which ultimately becomes something that kind of redeems them in this story. They find the thing that they truly wanted the whole time, but it was hidden. It was hidden in the mundane. And it could have been someone that they met years ago, or it could be, oftentimes in these Hallmark Christmas movies, there seems to be like a single dad who's just been working really hard. And then this young, successful woman comes in, or maybe it's the uncle, and then his niece works in the lodge, and then this woman breaks down outside of the small town and she's stuck there over Christmas because it snowed her in. And then the little niece is trying to hook her up with the uncle, who he's looking for his own way through the holidays. And, here's a sample plot. And I don't know if it's for any movie specifically, but I'm going to read it to you. A successful yet jaded Hollywood actress, Natalie, returns to her small hometown to escape a public breakup and to reconnect with her roots during the holidays. She ends up volunteering to direct the town's annual Christmas pageant, where she reunites with her high school sweetheart, Jake, now a single father and local firefighter. He's got to be a firefighter. And as they work together to create...
He's hot.
Yeah. As they work to create the perfect Christmas performance, old feelings resurface, as they do, and Natalie realizes the true happiness. She realizes that true happiness lies in love, community, and the quiet beauty of a life away from the spotlight.
Okay, that has to be like ChatGPT, or maybe not. Maybe that's like, is that a real movie? What is that movie called?
It is totally ChatGPT, and they call it Christmas in the Spotlight. And so, it's because I just asked ChatGPT, I was like, come up with some fake Hallmark movies. And it did. Like the next one, A Christmas to Remember. I mean, think about this. After a car accident leaves her with amnesia, Claire is taken by a charming local family during a Christmas season.
Yeah, okay, so those movies are kind of a great movie. Goldie Hawn, Kurt Russell, Overboard is the amnesia plot where a very rich, snobby lady has amnesia and she learns to love Kurt Russell and his kids. I remember Doc Hollywood with Michael J. Fox from when I was younger. Hotshot doctor gets stuck. That's where the guy gets stuck in the home. All of these kind of go back to that whole, I think they're called Golden Fleece stories, where like the Wizard of Oz, movies where there's no place like home. Like we've gone on a journey, but we're just coming back to the same spot. No matter where you go in your life and whatever you experience, whatever happens, it brings you back home. Now, let's take that to Christmas, redemption, the idea of Christmas movies. I mean, what better plot for a Christmas movie? I mean, with Christmas, most of us are having some kind of encounter with our family. We are kind of going home. We are in that context, reviewing our lives, not just the year, like years. Like, how did we get to be this person? And I think in that moment, what we all crave is this sense to find our people, to find acceptance, to find love.
Belonging.
We go back home. Yes, we go back home to belong. Come back to where we started because secretly we all hope that the parents who raised us, the siblings we grew up with, the sweet old people that were at the church we were when we were kids, that they'll all still be there and they'll all think we're great and they'll all give us a big warm hug. And so many times the great Christmas movies do that. That's what they do. And that's why I think ultimately though, Hallmark Christmas movies are not necessarily for me. I can allow it, right? Like I allow that movie, that those movies are there because like, that just goes to a yearning of the human heart and something we all want at Christmas. We all want to walk in to our parents' house, our siblings' house on Christmas Eve or Christmas, whenever you celebrate. You all want to walk in and just be loved.
And I think Hallmark movies are Christmas comfort food, right? They're that thing that kind of gives you that hug and tells you it's all going to be okay. And there may not be a deep plot.
Yeah. And I don't need much to put me in the mood for Christmas except to go to my parents when they do their Christmas celebration, walk in and there are sausage balls, those biscuit dough sausage and cheese balls that come right out of the oven. And there they are. And like in 2 seconds, I've eaten 8 of them. And it's like, I'm home. Here we are. That feeling of comfort is what so often it seems to be what we want, what we need. And in Christmas movies, what other movies bring you comfort like that? Or do you kind of go in a different direction? Are you like, well, I got my Christmas comfort. Now I want to get, I've got my Elf. I've got my Love Actually, which I think are both comforting movies. And then you go like, now I need my Die Hard. Or is Die Hard something that's comforting comforting to you also? I don't know.
I think this is a good segue because we talked about Hallmark Christmas movies, which often are marketed to women, to people who love that kind of story. But then you have the age-old question, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? And I would argue that it is, right? Let's look at this.
Well,
it's not too far from a Hallmark movie, dude. It's not too far from it because...
Oh, wow. Okay, tell me why.
Yeah, let's think about it. You've got this guy, he's down on his luck. He's in the middle of a divorce. He is coming back for a last-ditch effort to make things right with his wife. And he doesn't have it all together, but he was a successful cop in New York City. And now he's laying that aside to an extent to go and spend time with his wife at Nakatomi Plaza as they celebrate their Christmas spectacular.
The question is, in a Hallmark Christmas movie, our protagonist does not know she needs something else. Does John McClane know that he needs the love of his wife again? I mean, does he know that he needs family when he walks into Nakatomi Plaza?
I think his perspective has to change. And I think it's what happens during that night, which is anything but a silent night. But it's what happens during that night that changes his perspective about his wife and his family.
Yeah. Is it that he demonstrates that he's willing to sacrifice himself? He's willing to die to save them? Is that, and in that somehow or is it more his wife changes? I'm trying to remember. I think when he arrives, his wife they're estranged, right? Bad stuff has gone down.
Yeah, they're estranged. And what I really enjoy about Die Hard is, and what comforts me, is he's the everyman. When Bruce Willis was cast in this role of John McClane, he wasn't a big action star. And this movie barely made it to film because it wasn't like a Rambo or Commando by Schwarzenegger. This was a movie where here's a guy who had been on Moonlighting with Sybil Shepherd. He was just a regular guy. And like that line, he's like, come to the coast. We'll have some laughs. You know, he's there in the air duct with his little lighter. And he's just this reluctant hero. And I think just like in a Hallmark movie where people can find themselves in the characters, we can find ourselves in John McClane of here's a guy who's just got stuck, but who else is going to fix this? Who else is going to help? And he's going to do everything he can, even when he's at wit's end, to try to care for his wife and protect his wife. And I love
where that goes to men's fantasies about themselves. How he's funny, right? He's quick with a quip. He's resourceful. The thing happens and he doesn't panic. He thinks through it and he does the smart thing. In so many ways, John McClane is who I want to be as a man. Not just when the people I love are imperiled, but anytime life comes at you a little fast and you're trying to, how do I respond to this situation? John McClane's, he's a man's man. He doesn't get too worked up about it, but he makes calm, rational, smart decisions. And then when push comes to shove, he's willing to walk over broken glass and bare feet to solve the problem. So, I think you're right. I mean, I think Die Hard is the man's Hallmark Christmas movie.
Yeah.
And that, I would say, even the bad guy. I mean,
Hans Gruber.
Gruber?
Yeah.
Him, like, I love him as a villain. Alan Rickman is so great. Harry Potter fans know him as another role, but I'm starting. Oh man, Raleigh, this is so frustrating because I have to watch, like, as soon as we stop talking, I have to go watch like 10 movies already. But Die Hard's back on the list. Yeah, I watched it last Christmas with my son, and yeah, I got to go back to it for sure.
Well, think also of Reginald Vell Johnson's character. He's the police officer. He gets the call from John McClane. They strike up a friendship. So you see here male to male friendships, which is a beautiful thing. And he is looking for redemption and healing in a different way.
Yeah.
Like his issues aren't as apparent as John McClane's, but here he is, holiday season. His wife is about to give birth. And he's wrestling with this, am I okay? Am I enough? Am I a failure because I used my gun and someone died? Someone who didn't need to die, they died. And he's dealing with the trauma of his past actions. And as he is interacting with John McClane, you see this guy, he's all about Christmas. He's all about all the foods. He's ready to have a good time, but he's also a reluctant hero that you see at the very end. He saves the life of John McClane and his wife, Bonnie Bedelia. Holly McClane. Holly Gennaro McClane.
Yeah. Could it be that he's the other side of, like, part of us is a John McClane and part of us is Reggie? Is that his name? It's Reginald
VelJohnson. Yeah.
Okay. He kind of feels like he's both sides of us. He's like there's a part of us that's just the hero that is going to walk over broken glass and go fight the bad guys. There's another part of us that's telling that guy, you're going to be okay. You're doing the right thing. Everything's going to work out. There's something about his voice in John McClane's ear that is comforting. He's a bit of a guide, but he's more like just a validating, even when things are bad, even if you don't come out of this, John, I'm going to tell your story. You know what I mean? Like there's a sense of him that's like a moral compass, or at least a witness to the heroism that is also very appealing to us in the holidays. We go through, we experience a lot of struggle in the course of a year. Everybody. A year, 12 months of just trying to do the right thing, trying to make our way in the world, trying to do right by our relationships, trying to survive, make a living, make the best choices for the next season of life, all those things that we do. And you do come to the end of the year with a heaviness sometimes. And just to have a voice saying, everything's going to be okay. The choices you've made and the things you've done will be honored. I see you. I see the goodness in you. That's what John McClane's hearing in his ear in that relationship. And I think all of us at Christmas, man, if you can't get it from your parents or your family, don't you want to go to church and hear that? Don't you want to go to a Christmas Eve service and just hear the story of Christmas told as a rescue mission, and you're the one that's been rescued? I know I do.
Well, there's something about Reginald VelJohnson's character where he's coming with this message of you are loved, and he grounds John McClane.
Yeah.
Because John McClane's up there doing all sorts of wild things. And he's this grounding presence of saying, it's like he's saying, it's going to be okay. I'm here for you. He's that person who sees you as you are, even when you're freaking out, even when you're messy. And he says, you're okay. I believe in you. And I think we connect to that because we desire that. We want people to see us as we are, but not to run away, but to say, yes, I love you. I'm here. You are not a horrible human being. Because that is something that we need to hear at Christmas time, because Christmas gives us the opportunity to be horrible human beings, whether it's to be selfish, whether it's to lose our temper on family, to do whatever. We need someone to say, okay, your worst just came out, but it's okay. You still matter. God still loves you. I still love you. And I think in addition to his character, the one who's often left out when people talk about this film is the limo driver, Argyle. I think this guy is the spirit of Christmas. I think he's the spirit of Christmas. And I will make my argument, okay? I'm going to make my argument, and I want to hear your perspective. We all know that Argyle is a secondary character. He picks up John McClane at the airport, but he has this joy, this warmth. He's calm, he's positive. And all the while, everything is going crazy in Nakatomi Plaza. He is in the parking garage, even keel. He doesn't really know what's going on, but you have this through line of this subplot of Argyle where he's just listening to music. He's calling his girlfriend. He's having a good time. He's lighthearted. So as the heaviness is hitting, you also have this lighthearted, sensitive, sweet, just perspective that's coming from him. And it kind of gives you this unwavering belief that no matter what happens, everything's going to work out. And, he's in the back of the limo at this point. You're about 3/4 through the movie and he's basically just drinking champagne and everything is chaotic, but he's just there having a good time. And it's just a reminder that even if things are nuts, we can be hopeful. We can be of good cheer. We can be generous.
Well, okay. So I love that perspective on Argyle. I love the fact he's listening to the classic Run DMC Christmas Carol, Christmas in Hollis, or Christmas song. Now he is ignorant. He doesn't know what's happening, right? So he doesn't know that it's breaking loose up on the whatever floor, but he is a hero in waiting, right? He's a hero who's about to be called into action, and he's gonna be useful. He's gonna help the good guys win. And by that measure, I think you're right. I think he's we don't talk about him enough, Argyle, that he is this character that, I would love to be an Argyle, right? Like there's so many things going on in the world that everybody, my friends and everybody's so worried about and panicked and troubled by. And wouldn't it be great if we were just kind of like that guy, just rocking out to the Run DMC and just waiting to be called into action. And when our number's called, we go in heroically and do what we got to do. Yeah, I love that. The idea of him as the spirit of Christmas. He is the spirit of Christmas waiting to assert itself. He's the Christmas spirit that's just like there. And we don't know that. Sometimes we forget that he's coming for us, but he's coming for us. I love it. I think this whole episode is going to be on Die Hard. I think you should retitle the whole episode. Well, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Yes, the Mercy Cast has proclaimed that Die Hard is definitively a Christmas movie. And if you still are on the fence about that, you're just wrong. You have no love in your heart.
And I think I think you're right. And I do think I'm a diehard apologist, but I do believe that it is a Christmas movie. And if you're listening and you disagree, send me a message.
Yeah.
Tweet it out. Interact with this because I want to know your perspective as well. But I've come here because that for me is my Hallmark movie. That for me is this film that I watch where it comforts me because it hits on those themes that connect with me as a person who sometimes is reluctant. Sometimes life is a little messy. Sometimes when I face adversity, I don't want to face it. But I get to a point where I have to because running is not an option. And I love that about this film. You see people stand for what's right, even when they don't have to or maybe even want to. And so let's move on to another movie. Give me a deep cut. Give me something that I probably am not going to pick up or I'm not going to pick up on or something I'm not going to find on my Prime Video.
Okay. Well, I want to give you one that you can find on your Prime Video.
Give me one that you can find.
Dear friend Thomas Torrey has just this year released a new Christmas movie. It's called Long December. And it's digital. You can just Google it. You'll find it. Long December. And this film, the premise of it, if you're a fan of the movie Once, it came out, I don't know, over a decade ago now, just a very simple musician trying to make it, trying to have honest relationships with people that's a little bit of the premise of Long December, but Long December sets that story at Christmas. And it's about a struggling musician who's married, just has a new baby. And he's kind of going through like, am I ever going to make it? Is my dream ever going to come true? And it's so beautiful. It's so good. I'm such a fan of this movie. It's a little indie movie, but the music is incredible. I want to strongly recommend that people look up Long December. If you're a dreamer, if you're a would-be entrepreneur or an artist, or even building a young family, this would be a movie for you, Long December. So I've got to say that because you might not hear about it. And I think it would just be a beautiful way to experience Christmas and in particular Advent, the idea of Advent being a season of waiting. Christians are waiting for Christ in the Advent season, and Long December is about waiting for success, or waiting for your big break, or waiting for your life to suddenly make sense. So that's one I got to recommend that probably you haven't heard of, but let me give you two others that I believe to be Christmas movies, in the sense that we've talked about Die Hard being a Christmas movie and Hallmark movies being a Christmas movies. The Miracle of Morgan Creek.
Okay.
So that's like a 40s screwball comedy. It's set, get this is the premise. The premise is Preston Sturges, who's a famous 30s, 40s screwball comedy director. So it's a Hollywood movie from the 40s. And what has happened is that a young woman on Christmas Eve has wound up with child. An unmarried woman has it's come up that she is with child. And it's she's a local girl and this is like a 40s movie. She's just partied a little too hard with all the soldiers going overseas to fight the Germans and the Japanese. And now she's in a situation where she finds herself pregnant, and she doesn't want to tell her dad, obviously, or her sisters. And she doesn't know, she can't quite remember what happened. And in this context of an unwanted pregnancy, on the eve of Christmas, she finds true love and true acceptance. Now, the movie is hilarious. It's so funny. It is set at Christmas, I believe, for a thematic reason. But if you have not seen The Miracle at Morgan Creek, please see it. It is my go-to Christmas movie. If friends are over and it's like, we're in the mood for a Christmas movie, but we don't want to see things everybody's seen, Miracle at Morgan Creek. Incredible movie. So funny, so sweet, so touching. And at the end, just lump in your throat, like such a home run kind of movie. So that's one. And then the other one I want to recommend, gave you Long December. That's kind of an indie musical. And I gave you Morgan Creek. That's like a classic Hollywood screwball you probably haven't seen. I want to give you Whit Stillman's movie, Metropolitan, from 1990. Now, this is another movie that's set at Christmas, which means that it pops up a lot during December. But the movie is about some young, too smart for their own good, New York socialite kids at the end of the 80s. 1990 is when the movie came out. And it's the debutante season. So they're just going to parties and dates in New York City. And a young man comes into they meet a young man who doesn't belong to their social set. And he just becomes a part of the debutante season. And in the context of that Christmas and then New Year's season, things happen, revelations happen, lives are changed, and people. So it's like, if you think about it, it might be like a smart kid version of a Hallmark movie, but it's so wonderfully made. It's so beautifully acted and written. So Metropolitan, again, if you've seen all the stuff that everybody sees and you just want a new take on Christmas, I would say Metropolitan. And let me just give you one more. 8-Bit Christmas.
No, say that again.
8-Bit Christmas came out about 2 or 3 years ago. It originally came out on Apple. I think it was Apple So not some people missed it, but I think now it's on everything. I think it might be on Netflix and Amazon now. But 8-Bit Christmas is it's kind of for millennials and maybe young Gen Xers. It's kind of an updating of A Christmas Story, that movie. It's about a kid who wants one toy for Christmas, and that toy is, I believe it's the original PlayStation, and that's all he wants. And it's one of those movies where the movie's about, am I going to get the toy? A Christmas Story. Am I going to get the Daisy Red Ryder BB gun? That's all I want. That's all I care about. And then eventually we find out that that's not really what we wanted. So in the tradition of those Hallmark movies where, I've achieved all the success I can take, but I go home and find somebody that I connect with romantically that helps me see the truth, the real value in life. 8-Bit Christmas is that kind of story where it doesn't really matter what I get for my Christmas present. It's more about who I'm with, who I love, and who loves me, who accepts me. So I threw out some deep cuts. I understand that I can watch White Christmas all day long. Love White Christmas, maybe one of the more obvious Christmas movies to just queue up and watch during the season. But I am the kind of person that I do want to know some new things. What have I missed, or what can I watch with my friends that maybe we haven't seen already and that would be interesting and enrich our holiday season.
And that kind of forces us out of our comfort zones because we naturally want to watch the things that we've always watched, the things that we don't have to think too much about. But when we watch these new movies, we're going to get a different spin, or we may just get something that is old, it's trustworthy, but it's repackaged in more modern framework that can help us import that into our everyday life. One of the films that
I would say this, Raleigh, it's also great in the holiday season to ask your friends, to ask your loved ones. If you're in a new relationship, ask the person you're in a relationship with, what are the things you watch at Christmas? I mean, the way I just heard something like White Christmas, which is just such an obvious Christmas movie, is because my wife used to watch that all the time with her family. I never watched that movie growing up. So by coming into, it's a way that we grow together and grow in our relationships with other people. To say, what's your Christmas go-to? I mean, believe it or not, some people haven't seen the Charlie Brown Christmas special. Well, that's pretty dadgum great. That might be all you need to see at Christmas. So, it's good to ask people. And to that, I ask you, what are my movies I need to see, Raleigh?
Well, I think one that I just saw probably 10 years ago, but I went my whole life without watching it, was It's a Wonderful Life. And
oh, man.
I didn't watch it for a reason. I didn't watch it just because that's all people would ever talk about. And it would come on and I would just avoid it. And I was like, I haven't watched it yet, so maybe I can hold on, until I was walking through New York City when I lived there, and at the IFC theater, they were showing it on the big screen. And I went and I watched It's a Wonderful Life.
Theater?
I got to see it in a movie theater, and it was fantastic. And it's a film from 1946, so it moves slower than our modern films. And so I fell asleep for 10 or 15 minutes. I didn't miss any of the plot. I woke back up and I still had the main plot points. And I love it. I love how...
Did you see the telephone scene with Jimmy Stewart and Donna Reed, where they're listening to Sam on the phone, and finally he just lets the phone drop and he's... Man, when Jimmy Stewart takes this woman and says, listen, I don't want any of this. I want to leave. I don't want to be here anymore. He's fallen in love with this woman. It's dark. It's beautiful. It's sexy. Oh man, that one scene, Jimmy Stewart and Donna Reed on the telephone. Oh, yeah. I mean, man, that movie is the penultimate or the ultimate Christmas movie for a reason. And Raleigh, that movie is dark.
It is dark.
Let's not forget the premise of it is a guy's going to kill himself. The movie starts with the guy's like, I'm jumping off the bridge. This is over. And it's how he gets his life back.
And it's a good message. It's a good message for all of us because so many times our narrative, or at least the way that we perceive our narrative, is divorced from the meta narrative, like the bigger story that's going on. Like I love with the context of Christianity, you have this meta narrative that says that your story is actually part of this greater story. And because of this greater story, you're going to be okay. And I think in It's a Wonderful Life, we see George Bailey, he's disconnected. He thinks that his life is meaningless. And then when he sees that everyone else is different because he's not there, because his story is not intersecting with theirs, then that changes his viewpoint. That changes his perspective. Even though we are imperfect, even though we have our own struggles, when we share our story with other people, they are changed forever. Even if we don't see it, even if they don't tell us, you matter. And that's partly why I do what I do, because I want people to realize that their story matters and we need their stories. Everyone needs the stories of other people because with our limited perspective, we'll never be able to see things clearly. We need other people to speak into our lives. And I think George Bailey and his guardian angel, Clarence, give us they basically give us a master class in the realization that you do matter. Even when things feel dark, even when you feel like you have nothing to offer, you have way more to offer than you can ever imagine.
Frank Capra, who wrote and directed that movie, and I think it's important to note the year that this is after World War II, right after World War II. This is Jimmy Stewart's first job after being a B-25 bomber pilot in Europe. Like Jimmy Stewart volunteered to be in the Army Air Corps for World War II and got arguably the worst assignment. The guys that were flying bombers over Germany in 1942, 43, 44, the death rate was extremely high. You know, I don't know if it was 50%, but it was close to it. And Stewart survived that and came home and went back to acting. His first job is this. So just when you watch the movie, part of it is like, this is a veteran who has seen friends die, has been in combat, has had hard life happen. And I think you see it in the performance. The other thing about It's a Wonderful Life is the movie is written and directed by Frank Capra, who was a Catholic Christian, and who openly said that he believes in the Christmas story. Frank Capra believes in the birth, life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And so that too becomes an element of It's a Wonderful Life that undergirds that. That worldview permeates the movie. So the idea that every life matters is something that comes from Capra's faith. And even George Bailey's recognition of his value comes from an idea of faith. And there's lots of talk of angels in the movie. There's lots of talk. I mean, the movie it's framed by a conversation between, if not God, it's a heavenly conversation, and we gotta help this guy. But just knowing that the writer-director is a believer, is a Christian, and that Jimmy Stewart had seen the worst. He didn't have cushy service. Jimmy Stewart saw hard things. And to come back and bring that to his art. The performance of Jimmy Stewart in It's a Wonderful Life, 1946 versus, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, like 1935, 36, somewhere in there. It's night and day. It's a boy and a man. So again, I'm so glad you brought that movie up because we too often overlook it. And it's incredibly valuable and powerful. It's Christmas because I think it's at Christmas, because that scene where he's running, when he decides to live again,
Yeah.
He's Merry Christmas, Mr. Potter. Like all that. Like, he's leaping and jumping and he's celebrating Christmas and there's snow falling. But the overarching themes of the movie are definitely Christmas or definitely Christian. For sure.
Well, and it's interesting because there's a slight reflection of Ebenezer Scrooge, but rather than loathing other people, George Bailey is self-loathing. So his loathing has turned inward.
Interesting. Because you could read Mr. Potter is the Scrooge who doesn't get redeemed. But I like that read better where George Bailey is a different version of Scrooge. Wow. Yeah, that's a really interesting thing to consider with that movie for sure.
In our remaining time, I want to talk about multiple movies, but what I want to do is basically what we just did with these last few films. And I want to talk about themes that people may not recognize, but if they look for them as they watch these movies, it will change their experience of the movie. And so I want to hear from you some of the themes that we can look for in regular movies. And the first one I'm going to start with is 1984, Gremlins. Yes, this is a movie that was set during the Christmas season. A man gives his son, Billy Peltzer, a little mysterious creature known as a mogwai. He's cute. He gives him this mogwai. He buys it in Chinatown, and it's a special gift, and there were just a couple of rules.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the rules?
Yeah, you don't feed them after midnight. You don't get them wet, and you don't. What's the third one?
Actually, the only two I remember are don't feed them after midnight, and they can't get wet.
Yeah, I think that maybe those are the rules. Yeah. Well, so I got to unpack it by saying at first, I mean, if we want to get to theology, I think Gremlins is a great example of how the law fails us.
Yeah, there's law and gospel in Gremlins.
For sure. We're not going to be able to follow the rules. It's back to the garden. It's like the only thing I'm asking you to do, like God's saying to Adam and Eve, is like, the only thing I want you to do is I don't want you to get the gremlins wet. I don't want you to feed the gremlins after midnight.
That's right.
And so that's just going to happen. We know it's going to happen. So that's where I would start with that. I would say that Gremlins is just a lot of fun. I mean, it's a kind of creepy, scary movie to maybe a 11 or 12-year-old. It's more cute to us. So I think that's one of those that falls in my Christmas camp of movies. That's just like, if you have fun, it's okay to have fun at Christmas. And that might be the best way to have fun with, if you're hanging out with 16 cousins and a couple of aunts and uncles, maybe Gremlins is your movie. But if we look at it as the failure of law, the law is not going to save you. What does save them in Gremlins is just love and individual heroism. The idea that when evil is just multiplying at an alarming rate, there still can be good people who are able to stand up to and fight. I think the bad gremlin's name is Stripe. There will be people that will, for love and for relationship, can do the right thing. What's your take on Gremlin? Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. And I think one of the things I like about Gremlins is there's this light and dark that are both present. Because sometimes we want to micromanage our Christmas experience and we just want to have joy. And then when we have this, I think it's a lowercase L law of my Christmas has to look like this. And then when reality sets in, you may have had that argument with that person. You may have had a fight. There may be chaos that ensues. And I think that's one of the reasons we love National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, because it grounds us in reality. Like, your Christmas isn't going to be as bad as the Griswold family Christmas, but it may look like it a little bit, and that's okay. I like the light. I like the dark. I like just the chaos and the joy that come together in unexpected ways. And so I think a good segue would be, what are some themes that we can look for in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation?
Well, all of us, I'm doing it right now. I'm sure you are too. When we're recording this, it's November and we're making plans for Christmas.
That's right.
And just like Clark Griswold has the perfect plan for the Christmas he wants to give his family, which involves bringing some elements into it. Family always messes things up, and sometimes neighbors mess things up as well, especially if your neighbor is like Elaine from Seinfeld before she was on Seinfeld.
Yeah.
She's one of the neighbors. So I think all of us have this thing. We come to Christmas and we want it to be awesome. And we're making plans. We're taking steps to make sure it's awesome. Clark Griswold's Christmas plans fail miserably to degrees that would be expensive and even life-threatening were they to happen to us. I think that's the movie that reminds us that do your best. Doesn't work out when the perfect Christmas dinner ends with bickering and infighting and somebody slams the door and leaves. It's still Christmas. We're still family. Almost like we haven't mentioned Home Alone, but Home Alone almost has the same idea that when the worst happens for Christmas, when everything goes wrong, there is still something true and there's still something valuable. There's still something that's honored in us trying and our efforts to make it something important and special that does bring its own rewards. So yeah, that's, Christmas Vacation is another one of those, just go and have fun. If you're able to laugh and elbow your spouse and say, that's just like so-and-so, that alone is worth the experience of Christmas Vacation.
And you bring up Home Alone. And I think so many times when we watch that film, we love it and it's comfortable for us, but we can get lost in the narrative of the Wet Bandits and their robbery and just the slapstick antics that are happening. I mean, I think it's funny. I think it's hilarious. I think Joe Pesci is incredible in that role. Incredible in that role. But we often miss the bird lady. We miss the older man who Kevin is scared to death of and then ends up sitting in a worship service on Christmas Eve with.
So beautiful. That scene's so beautiful. And I would say that I heard somebody teach the Beatitudes this way. If you feel good about what Jesus is saying, blessed are thee. If you feel like, okay, I got that one down, then you haven't heard it right. You're the bad guy in the story. Your job is to figure out how. And I think like Home Alone is the story about we're the wet bandits. Those of us who try to make our child's Christmas perfect. Those of us who try to make our family's Christmas a dream. We're the wet bandits. We're the one that's invading the house and trying to get what we need out of that Christmas. I think all of us, especially those of us who are planners and want things to work out good and really like the turkey to look a certain way and place settings to be a certain, I think we need to take a moment and just allow ourselves to take that out of our hands, release that, and let a gathering of family, an end of the year celebration, a celebration of Christ's birth to happen. Let it happen instead of forcing something. And so I think that's a useful thing to take away from Home Alone.
Or we're the parents that we're so preoccupied with our own stuff and looking the part that we forget the things. In this case, your child, you forget the things that are most important.
Yes. I mean, which is the child.
Yeah.
The parents in Home Alone are more concerned with justice, with punishing Kevin. Unjustly, by the way, but he was framed.
You little jerk.
Buzz is the one that should have just been buried. He should have been left at Home Alone. But it's true. It's true. We are all concerned with rules and justice until we suddenly realize, oh, my goodness, I think we left our child at home. And now our child is embroiled in the fight for his life. Anyway, yeah.
Well, the last one that I want to talk about is something that we've seen since we were kids. The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. Yes, you've seen the old cartoon, the Dr. Seuss cartoon that you're very familiar with. You've loved the soundtrack to it. Because some people actually, they didn't get the cartoon. They had the record and they listened to the record. And it's just this beautiful, hard, chaotic, scary, almost horror story, which someone did pick up. And a few years ago, they made a horror version called The Mean One, which was what would happen if it was an actual horror story.
But yeah.
It was fantastic. It was terrible. It wasn't a great film, but it did paint the picture that if you were in Whoville, this is a horror story. This is scary.
Do you know, this is a trivia question, do you know who that low singing voice actor who's saying, "You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch"? Do you know who that voice is? He was also the voice of Tony the Tiger in the old cereal commercials.
Was it Burl Ives? Was that it?
The reason why you would think it's Burl Ives might be because he did Christmas things, but this person's name is Thurl. Thurl, Thurl Ravenscroft.
Ooh.
He was the Grinch. He was Tony the Tiger, other voices. Anyway, just a fun, Grinchy Christmas bit of trivia.
Well, that's great.
Okay. The Grinch. Yeah, they're great. That's the same guy. So the Grinch is a Dr. Seuss thing, right? Is that?
Yeah.
It's a Dr. Seuss thing. So it started as a book?
Right. Correct.
TV special. So what do we know about Dr. Seuss things? So one of the things is Dr. Seuss things are playful and wordplay and for young children. But in the Grinch, something changes. Something about what Dr. Seuss is writing about is very different. And I think he's writing about the power of innocence, the power of not having malevolent intentions, of not being dark. Because what ends up saving the Grinch, who's just an awful, awful creature, no doubt. Not only does he abuse his dog, slash reindeer, he's just the worst. But what saves him seems to be kindness, generosity, love, the things we would quantify, we would describe as the Christmas spirit. These are the things, aside from the Jesus part of Christmas, which we acknowledge. That idea of the Christmas spirit is something innocent and pure. And isn't it interesting, Raleigh, that idea that the pure, simple, small, beautiful things, the true things will save us, is the same thing that happens in all the Hallmark Christmas movies, right? The simple, the pure, it's the same thing that happens in A Christmas Carol. God bless us one and all. Is there anything more innocent than a little crippled child saying that to Ebenezer Scrooge? It's the movie Elf is completely premised on that. There is this absolutely pure, innocent force in the world that meets the most cynical, dark, materialistic force in the world and says, "I love you. I forgive you." The Miracle of Morgan Creek, Metropolitan, it's the same thing. It's the innocent element. And ultimately, even in the brutally dark, It's a Wonderful Life, we end with Zuzu's petals, right? We end with this beautiful child who says, the teacher says, every time you hear a bell rings, an angel gets its wings. I think if anything, the Grinch brings us back to this idea that there's something about innocence, forgiveness, love, purity of spirit that pervades all of our favorite pieces of Christmas media and actually pervades and animates our own Christmas story as Christians. So yeah, maybe the Grinch in its own weird, creepy, spooky way, which I agree, it's kind of creepy and spooky, is an archetype, or it's the quintessential Christmas story. And I don't know, I don't even know if it's an hour long. It's easy to go. And I like Charlie Brown Christmas. We have the innocent Linus who just goes up and says, I'll tell you what Christmas is about, Charlie Brown. And he recites he recites Luke 2. Maybe that's what we are looking for. Maybe that's what we're hoping for and searching for in all of our Christmas movies.
I think what we find is that perceived weakness, the things that we want to avoid, it's in that weakness that we discover that love does conquer all. And that's what we see sown throughout almost every Christmas movie. It's the mundane things. It's the things that we think aren't strong, the things that we don't think matter, that ultimately change our perspective and change our lives. And so as we're sitting down to watch these Christmas movies, it's good to just sit back, enjoy it, and know that there's a high probability that, chaos may ensue, but everything's going to be okay. If we take one thing from the page of Hallmark, though your Messiah did not come wearing flannel, promising to give you the life that you've always wanted, your Messiah was born in a manger, and he lived, died, and rose for you. From the wood of the manger to the wood of the cross, we see this gospel of reconciliation that reconciles us back to God and to each other. And so even if your Christmas is crazy this year, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
And I say that I think this scholarship was developed with the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. But I do think that actually swaddling clothes, I think that is flannel. Now you're going to have to ask somebody way smarter than me, somebody who knows the theological and historical, knows the text, but I do think swaddling in the original Greek does translate as flannel.
Yeah. Well, I
may be mistaken. I think that's true.
Yeah, so. I think baby Jesus wore flannel. I think that's right.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it connects to everything that we've talked about, and it's the through line. And so, I think this is good. Hey, Chris, thanks for joining me, man.
Absolutely. Anytime, Raleigh. I hope I see you before the holidays. If I don't, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas
to you and yours. And I hope to watch some movies with you sometime again soon.
Let's do it. Merry Christmas to all listeners of the Mercy Cast.